Alright, welcome to the Wrestling Angle. I am Chad Z. I'm your host. I'm just going directly live right now. It is 9:46 in the morning after a long night of wrestling and after a couple couple beers from myself, toasting the day before, which was 316 day. I ended up passing out on the couch and got woken up by my dog to let him out at 3 o'clock in the morning. Got 4 hours of sleep. Got up, got my son on the bus, and took a shower and all that good stuff. And decided, since I'm up and about, I would do the recap for the AEW show. So I just want to say that, and we'll get into it later on in the show, but AEW really put on a great show last night. NXT did too. So Wednesday nights are really turning in to be the time to watch wrestling. Or if you're me, you pretty much watch wrestling every day, whether it's old school stuff, New Japan, or replays of the shows. So let's get into AEW. They had a stacked card for the show, and the main event, which was Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa in a lights out match. This is the very first time, I believe, that a women's match has main evented Dynamite, which is tremendous. And these two girls killed it. And we'll get into that later on. We also had John Moxley versus Eddie Kingston. They wrestled the Good Brothers. We got the introduction to the brand new Four Horsemen, if you will, but they're not the Four Horsemen. They're called the Pinnacle, and that's MJF, Dax Harwood, Cash Wheeler, Shawn Spears, I think I said MJF, and Wardlow, managed by Tully Blanchard. I really like this group. They did something very interesting, and they showed up to the building getting out of a private airplane and heading into a limo. We haven't seen this in quite some time, and they look like a stellar group. I mean, I'm really glad that they didn't use the Four Horsemen name. Actually, I don't think they can. I think WWE owns that title. But wow, what a group! I mean, they look like stars. And later on in the show, they ended up. They came in. They introduced themselves as the Pinnacle, and later on in the show, they ended up taking the Inner Circle's dressing room, which the Inner Circle wasn't on the show, which is good because then they get to sell the injuries, and we'll get a rebuttal from Chris Jericho, probably not. If not next week, then we'll get a rebuttal from him the week after. But I think this is a feud that is going to last for quite some time, especially since AEW's pay-per-view is until May. so they can keep going with this on Dynamite, and build up to the pay-per-view and um, have the blow-off match at the pay-per-view. Or if I was booking it, I would have the continuation of the feud keep going, and like back in the old school days where a feud would last 6 months to a year, and like a blow off match would be something like, if Dusty Rhodes was involved, it'd be a bull rope, a cage match, and whatever AEW decides to do it. They could even do it with the stadium brawl. I mean, they got enough guys, so that could be their annual thing. But that's getting a little bit into the show. We also got a match between Cody Rhodes and Penta El Zero Miro. I have a hard time pronouncing names. So we got Matt Hardy, Isaiah Cassidy, Mark Quinn, The Butcher and the Blade. They faced Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, Marco Stunt, Bear Boulder, and Bear Bronson in a 10-man tag. I'll tell you what, I really like Bear Country. I only got to see them wrestle once in a CZW show from High Spots, and these guys are a really good tag team. For two big guys, they can really move around. So, and then we also got Rey Fenix took on Angelico, and we also got Jade Cargill in action. So, the first match we got was Cody Rhodes with Arn Anderson. He went up against Penta. This was a really good match. I just got to comment on the fact the way both AEW and NXT start their shows. This, by having a match like this, it just builds up to it builds the show. It gets the crowd involved. There was a lot of high spots. Cody's still injured with his shoulder. There was Penta ended up setting up the guardrail on one of the other guardrails. He ended up taking the bump through it. But this was a really good match to start off the show and build up the crowd. So Cody ended up defeating Penta. And then Penta ended up attacking Cody at the end of the match, and he was chased off by Dustin Rhodes and the Gun Club. And then they continued their the building up to QT Marshall leaving the Nightmare Family, because he ended up coming out later and basically got confronted by Dustin Rhodes saying where the hell was he and all this other stuff. So I mean, you're taking a match and you're continuing a feud with Penta and Cody, and then you're breaking off and having QT appear, and then you got that storyline going off to the side. So you got one match and you're building two storylines. That's how you write a show. I mean, both shows last night did a nice job laying everything out for their next couple shows. NXT laid everything out for their pay-per-view. And then, as you're going to see, that AEW did a nice job for laying out their feuds for the next couple shows. Then we got an interview with the Young Bucks, and they were interviewed by Alex Marvez. And they were interrupted by Don Callis. And he basically tells the Bucks that, if they're not going to get on the Kenny Omega train, then they're going to be left behind. I mean, he didn't say that in so much words, but that's what he basically meant. And Callis did a interview on Impact, talking to Rich Swann, basically setting up his match with Kenny Omega at the next pay-per-view. They've yet to say that it's going to be a title versus title match, although that's what it's going to be. I would not be too surprised if you don't see Kenny Omega win the Impact belt at that pay-per-view. And then I think that this feud with New Japan and Impact and AEW is going to kick into full gear. No pun intended to their to AEW's pay-per-view. But I think that's what you're going to end up seeing. And the New Japan and AEW thing has kind of fizzled out a little bit. Yeah, you basically have got the Good Brothers appearing on AEW television each week, and they just recently lost the tag belts to David Finlay and Juice Robinson. I'm interested to see if Finn and David Finlay wear those belts in New Japan. So that'd be kind of interesting. But if they're going to continue, if they're going to continue this feud, they really need to act on it. And what I mean by act on it is don't let it fizzle out like you guys are doing. There's been no talk of New Japan at all. We had that since Kenta's appearance on AEW. And then, it's being mentioned on Impact. And it kind of continues with David Finlay and Juice Robinson winning the belts. But the big thing is I think the big thing everybody's waiting for is guys like Okada and Kenta and even Jay White, Sonata, Ishii. Let's see some of these guys appear on AEW, and then let's kick this feud into high gear. And so we'll see what happens in the next couple weeks. If they don't address it by next week, then they need to address it by the week after, and or you're looking at almost a month before New Japan, or since New Japan has been mentioned on AEW television. So that's enough about that. Next up, we got Jade Cargill. She defeated Danny Jordan. This was basically a squash match, and it was used to continue the feud between Cargill and Red Velvet, because Red Velvet was at ringside and she took a swing at her, almost got her too, which was interesting. I really like Red Velvet. She is she's a little spitfire, and she's a great worker too. By her being in that mixed tag team match with Cody, it really elevated her as a star. I could see her down the line challenging for the AEW Women's Belt. And I believe that would be a fantastic match, regardless of who the champion is at that time. So then next up we got MJF, and he introduces this new stable. And the stable is going to be called the Pinnacle. And he said it's been months since he used the tagline, "I'm better than you and you know it." So MJF is back as being that asshole on television. And to what I hear, I've never actually met him, but he doesn't change. He lives his gimmick. And, another guy that lived his gimmick up until he turned babyface was Roddy Piper. And that he's being compared to Piper as far as he has it all. He has the in-ring work, and he also has the mic skills. So, and Tully Blanchard as the mouthpiece. He really doesn't need to be the mouthpiece. He can just be kind of like the guy on the outside. Similar to the way the Horsemen were, where J.J. Dillon didn't need to be the mouthpiece, but he did the majority of the talking, and then handed the microphone off to Arn or Tully or Flair or Luger or whatever, or Wyndham. So I really like the fact that I like the name. I like the Pinnacle. I'm really glad that they didn't use the Horseman name or anything that has to do with the Horseman, as far as holding up the fingers or anything like that. Maybe they could come up with some cool hand sign that they can do. There's 5 guys in the group. 6 if you include Tully Blanchard. But, Tully Blanchard got on the mic and he said that, he was involved with the Cream of the Crop back 30 years ago, he said. And, the best of the best. And he says what we have in this ring right now is the best of the best. And he's not lying. I mean, you've got Wardlow, who is that guy that's going to be the future. You got Shawn Spears, who is a tremendous worker. Wasn't used well in the WWE at all with the Perfect 10 gimmick, but he's now called the Chairman, back from his feud with Cody Rhodes. You got Dax Hardwood and Cash Wheeler, who are tag team specialists. And then you got MJF, who is the all-around package. I will say this, though. The one thing that they need to address is that the ring that MJF has won. He hasn't really done anything with it. I thought it was supposed to be similar to like a title where it was going to be defended, or he could cash the ring in and for a title shot. He still has the ring. He's had it for going on almost a year now, if not longer. And they really haven't mentioned too much about it. And the only thing he does with it, he uses it as a foreign object. So that was a really good segment with the introduction of the Pinnacle. Next up, we got Matt Hardy, Private Party, and the Butcher and the Blade. They went up against Jurassic Express, Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, Marco Stunt, and Bear Country, Bear Boulder and Bear Bronson. If I'm going to complain about the show, it would be this match right here. There was way too many guys in the ring at one time. And Matt Hardy I hate to say this because I love him. I love his gimmick that he's got going on, Big Money Matt. But he should stay out of the ring as much as possible and just continue to manage. Because you got all these young guys in there, and then you've got Matt Hardy. The only one that can probably be compared to Matt Hardy as far as ring time is the Blade. And so they ended up defeating Jurassic Express. And on a side note too, I love the fact that Jungle Boy or Tony Khan bought the music for Jungle Boy's entrance. It's really cool, and it gets the crowd singing and stuff. So that's a nice effect to it. Next up, we got a video played with Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. And they're talking about how they want to fight the Good Brothers. They mocked Talking Shop-A-Mania. Mox said that he wasted his money on that because it was a shit pay-per-view. And then Kingston got serious, and he says AEW is their yard, and he quoted 50 Cent and Tupac before the video ended. I really like that Moxley and Kingston are together. There's a real life friendship, and it shows in the ring. The only thing that I didn't get to catch, interview with Christian Cage. He was interviewed by Dasha. I'm just gonna quote the Observer here. It says Christian Cage was interviewed by Dasha about why he joined AEW. Christian said he's not just a workhorse, he's the workhorse in wrestling. Just in case anyone forgot, the only spot in the rosters he's interested in is the AEW World Championship. He said that Kenny Omega's on borrowed time as champion, and his mission in AEW is to cement his legacy and outwork everyone. My only problem with this is that I think it's a little soon to put Christian Cage in the AEW title picture. They're going to get to a point where Kenny Omega is being stretched thin, where he's involved in all these feuds. It could lead to Christian being inserted into the Kingston-Moxley storyline with Bullet Club USA, which is what I hope they do. And they hold off on that title match until the pay-per-view, which would be in May. So they have, March. We're almost done with March. It was April, May. So they got 2 months to build that match. And I really don't, I didn't want to see Christian Cage involve the AEW title picture right off the bat. No different than do I want to see Sting involved in the AEW title picture. And, there's a lot of younger guys that deserve a title shot. And you've got these older guys. I don't want to say older because Christian Cage is basically my age, if not younger. Sting's older, obviously, but it doesn't look like they're going to put him in the title picture. It looks like they're going to have him still feuding with Taz's group. And I'll get to something in a second. So going back to Christian, the way I would book it is I would insert him into the to the Moxley-Kingston feud. To keep him out of the title picture for the time being, and then in the pay-per-view in May, you can set up a match with him and Kenny Omega somehow. And by that time, the New Japan Impact thing will probably be over, and we'll just be seeing AEW guys. Or we really could see, with the NWA coming back, we could see NWA inserted in there too. So, NWA has their pay-per-view coming up this coming Sunday, and then they're ready to start back up NWA Power. So that's that. So then we got Jon Moxley versus Eddie Kingston. Or no, Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston versus the Good Brothers. And basically this was just a brawl. And Kenny Omega got himself involved, and he basically beat up Eddie Kingston, and he beat up Moxley. Kenny Omega is, I didn't really think that he would be a good heel, even though he was the cleaner and in Japan, part of Bullet Club. But you know what? Bullet Club over in Japan is similar to the way the NWO was over here in America, and that the Japanese fans really like Bullet Club. So they're, yes, they're heels on paper, but the crowd treats them like baby faces. So even though they boo them when they do something dastardly. But, Bullet Club over in Japan is cool. So, we got the Sting and Darby Allin interview. Sting comes out first, and then Darby's introduced. Lance Archer and Jake Roberts interrupt, and Lance Archer calls Allin a indie-rific joke, and Jake Roberts got in there and he grabbed the mic and he called him something too. I can't remember what it was, but Archer said he's gonna put Darby Allin in a coffin. So when this match finally happens, I would like to see Archer take the belt off of Darby, because to be perfectly honest with you, Darby Allin doesn't need that belt. He's elevated himself. He's elevated the belt. The belt hasn't elevated him. He was already at that point where he didn't need a title. Somewhere down the road, you're going to see him win the AEW title, and then that's going to be where the title makes the man. But as of right now, Allin is basically making that title. And it was already elevated when Cody held it, and when Brody Lee held it for the limited time he had it, and I like the fact that Darby has the belt right now, but I think someone like Archer could benefit from holding the TNT Championship because it gives him credibility. Although I don't think he needs credibility. That guy's he is 10 times, actually I take that back, 100 times better than when he first started wrestling, when I first saw him in TNA. And, he eventually went to WWE. They didn't do anything with him. Then he went to Japan, basically changed his character to the Murder Hawk, and he was off and running. And, he was tagging with Davey Boy Smith Jr., and they were IWGP Tag Team Champions for a little bit. And, he's really, Lance Archer's really put in the time and the road work. So, this is a guy that deserves to be in that top spot and to be up in the upper echelon of the AEW guys. And he's going to get there. So, by him winning the TNT Championship, that's how he's going to get there. And then after that, Team Taz interrupted, and this was a little unusual. I did not expect to see this at all. Brian Cage basically took the mic and said that he respects Sting, and that Sting is the icon. And then Team Taz argued with Cage, and they walked off. So we could see Brian Cage turn babyface. And whoever gets the AEW title, he could start feuding with them. Or if he branches off and he leaves Team Taz, he's got that feud with Ricky Starks. He can feud with Powerhouse Hobbs, for a few months, and then move him into the title picture. I personally didn't like Brian Cage as Impact World Champion, just because I don't think it was the right stage for him. And plus, he wasn't allowed to have the matches that he can have. If you want to see fantastic matches from Brian Cage, go watch his old PWG stuff. And he was mostly working with younger guys and making those guys look like stars. He was working with a lot of the luchadors that they would bring in. He was in a tag team with Michael Elgin as the fucking machines. And, he's done some amazing stuff outside of the big stage. And that stuff shouldn't be unrecognized, Do I think he's being held back? Yes. I think he needs to, they need to get him away from Taz. I'm not going to lie. I was a huge Taz fan when he was in ECW. When he went to WWE, that was the shits. But when he was in ECW, Paul E was booking him the right way as being this this pissed off guy who had a chip on his shoulder because he wasn't getting a break, had that feud with Sabu, ended up winning the television title, elevated the television title, and then he ended up winning the heavyweight belt. And then he got signed by WWE, and his career basically went to the shitter. Other than the stuff he did on commentary, which is the Taz that I would rather see in AEW as a commentator. I think he fucking sucks on Dark as a commentator with Excalibur. I think they do too much goofing around, and the commentators are there to get the talent over. Yes, I know Taz's character on screen is a heel, but you don't need to shit on the talent, and that's what you're doing. The two Dark shows are there to get the younger talent over, and when you're shitting on them during commentary, you're not doing your job. So, AEW needs to take notice to that Taz possibly needs to be removed from commentary. And, they got the 3-man booth on Wednesdays. They could take Tony Schiavone and put him in there with Excalibur. They could put JR in there, even though JR is not the same JR he was in WWE. But, let's give the guy a break. He's had some things go on in his life, and he still suffers from Bell's palsy. So, but he's still a good commentator. Tony Schiavone's awesome. Paul White is good. Paul White does exactly what he's supposed to do. I mean, now why not put him on the other Dark and remove Taz? Because he does exactly what he's supposed to do. He's there to get the talent over, not goof on them. And I've had this argument, and I just don't like the fact that Taz shits on the wrestlers when he's on commentary. Or he just fucking goofs around and doesn't pay attention to the match. Or let's do this. Just let Excalibur call Dark by himself. He called PWG all by himself, and it was fantastic. He knows all the moves. He knows the guys. Let him call Dark by himself. He doesn't need a color commentator. He doesn't need that second guy to work off of. If anything, he gets wrapped up in the shit Taz does, and it just comes off bad on television. This is like one of your, the show's on YouTube, and it's not on the main stage, but the two Dark shows are set to get the young guys over, and that's enough. That's enough of what I'm going to talk about that, because I'm getting off on a tangent. Bottom line, remove Taz from Dark and let Excalibur call the matches by himself. He can do it. So, and then we got a video package with Scorpio Sky, and he basically says nice guys finish last, and he is no longer a nice guy. So this is a really good move for them to turn Scorpio Sky heel. They could insert him anywhere into any of the title pictures. It would probably be the TNT title. He came very close to beating Darby Allin for that TNT belt at Dynamite, last week's Dynamite. So Scorpio Sky is now a heel. Then we got Rey Fenix versus Angelico, and this is just, I cannot put Rey Fenix over enough. This guy is a star. He reminds me of Rey Mysterio when Rey Mysterio hit the States when he was in ECW, as far as flying around the ring and all that stuff. And I know I've stated in the past that I'm an old school guy and I like ground wrestling and all that stuff, but I really like Rey Fenix. This is a kid that, with Pac and Penta, part of Death Triangle, this is a kid that's going to break off on his own, and he's going to be a star. He's going to hold one of those belts one day, whether it's the tag team championship. I would love to see him hold the tag team championship with his brother, but it looks like they're having Penta go off on a singles run, and he can hold the belt with Pac. And I know I've stated in the past I don't like it when they put mismatched tag teams together, but when they're gonna do tag team moves, it's okay. So This was a really good match, and Ray Phoenix ended up defeating Angelico. Who, by the way, Angelico, looks like he's going to go off on a singles run because Jack Evans is now working for Matt Hardy. So that's another good team, you know, Angelico and Jack Evans. Jack Evans is a phenomenal worker, and these guys have worked mostly in Mexico. And you know what they remind me of? They remind me of Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr. I can't remember what their. I think it was they were El Desperados or something like that. But these guys were phenomenal workers, and Art Barr, before he passed away, I mean, if he had been signed, he was set to debut with ECW before Eddie Guerrero, and Eddie Guerrero actually took his spot. If Art Barr had lived and went on to that spot, there's no telling what he would have done. I mean, he could have been, both him and Eddie could have been signed by WCW as a tag team, and they would have ruled the tag team division. I mean, those guys had so much heat in Mexico. Art Barr had so much heat in Mexico, but he was well respected down there. So, but it's just too bad that he had to pass away at such an early age. Then we went into the back and we got Miro. He was interviewed by Alex Marvez. He talks about how the Chuck Taylor and Orange Cassidy feud is basically over. Kip Sabian walks up and he says that it's not over in my eyes. They ruined his wedding. He blamed Miro for running into Penelope and Penelope getting smashed into the cake. And then Miro says, well, what are you doing? You're blaming me for that? And he says, no, I'm not blaming you for that. But he says, we need to have a match with them to finish this. And then Miro told him to stop letting his wife distract him. He says he speaks from experience by having his wife at ringside. It's just a distraction. I'm kind of wondering how Lana felt about that promo. But Sabian then accepted challenge from Chuck Taylor and Orange Cassidy. And so that match is made for next week, I believe. And then Alex Marvez is shown interviewing Dark Order. And there's an open challenge. And -1 accepted the open challenge, but then Evil Uno pushed him back and said, maybe in another decade you'll be ready to step in the ring. But John Silver actually takes up the open challenge. So, and then next weekend Dynamite, we're going to get Nyla Rose versus Tay Conte, the Pinnacle, FTR and Sean Spears versus the Varsity Blondes and Dante Martin. We're going to get the TNT Open Challenge Championship, Darby Allin versus John Silver, which should be a really good match. And then we're going to get Kenny Omega versus Matt Sydal, and if Sydal wins, he gets an AEW title match. So, and that's another thing. I mean, we got the Sydals in that feud, and Kenny Omega is just being put. I don't want to say that it's he's being put in too many feuds. I just think he's being spread too thin. Because not only is he on the screen with these feuds, but he's also off the screen, and he's basically in charge of the women's division. So that's why the women's division has been so prominently shown on AEW television, whether it's Dark or Dynamite. So Kenny Omega is a big proponent for women's wrestling. He knows a lot of the Japanese stars. He's the reason why the Japanese stars are being brought in, and he's the reason why the women are being shown. So good for Kenny for recognizing the fact that women's wrestling is not just bra and panty matches. We're way past that era, and that these girls can really go. And then we got MJF and the Pinnacle. They took over the Inner Circle's locker room. And then we come to the main event. And this is what I've been waiting to talk about. It's an unsanctioned, lights out match. Thunder Rosa versus Dr. Britt Baker with Rebel. And they did the lights out gimmick where Justin Roberts explains when the lights go out that AEW, and they come back on, AEW is not responsible for what happens during this match. And all I can say is these two women killed it. I mean, it's probably the best women's match, probably even the best match I've seen on Dynamite for a long time. Both girls got color. Britt Baker's face was a crimson mask, and Thunder Rosa elevated her star, and she's going to be going back to the NWA, but I think you're going to see Thunder Rosa come back and either continue this feud with Britt Baker, but hopefully that it's not over, because these two really have chemistry. I think what you're probably going to see is Thunder Rosa is going to go back to the NWA and either win the NWA Women's titles, finish off her stuff with NWA, or continue working for them. And then when Britt Baker finally wins the AEW Women's Championship, there you go. You've got a match set up for a championship title defense, because these two girls have tremendous chemistry together. And whether it's real hatred or not, it sure the hell comes off as real hatred on screen. I mean, there was everything used. There was crutches, the stairs, tables, thumbtacks. There was a move where Britt Baker suplexed Thunder Rosa off the top rope onto steel chairs, and Baker took the majority of that bump. Britt Baker took a bump into the thumbtacks, and so did Thunder Rosa. And these were real thumbtacks, guys. I mean, you could see the pins on them, and they were stuck. They were stuck in the girls' boots and the girls' backs. And Thunder Rosa hit a Death Valley driver on a ladder. And like I said, Britt Baker was a crimson mask. I cannot, if you get a chance, go back and watch this match. You can fast forward through the entire show, but watch this match, because this match is what made this show. They did such a nice job building it up on both Darks, and the week before on AEW Dynamite. And I was surprised. Well, you know what? I wasn't surprised to see that they were the main event, because they deserved to be in the main event, because these two girls worked their ass off. And what ended up happening is Thunder Rosa did I think they call it the Thunder Driver, but she did a Thunder Driver through tables and ended up pinning Britt Baker to win the match. And then I just saw this morning there was, after the show went off the air, Tony Khan, Kenny Omega, and a lot of the doctors were out there, and Tony Khan kept saying, "What a fucking match." I mean, he said that this was a candidate for show of the year. And I can't argue that fact. But that whole show was made by the main event. I'm sorry, the girls stole the show. And to see those two girls get color was just amazing. I mean, we've seen Britt Baker get busted open, and she has a t-shirt that's all blood, with her on her face being all blood. But you don't really see women bleed in today's wrestling. And whether she was busted open the hard way or she bladed or whatever it was a tremendous effect, and it added to the match. We don't need blood in every single match, but in a match like this, you need that, because it adds to the effect of the match, and it adds to the effect of the feud. And both girls did a tremendous job. They both got a standing ovation from the guys in the back. Tony Khan kept saying it was fucking match of the year. Thanked both girls for putting their bodies on the line, basically. And AEW, what a tremendous show. And I'm not mad at myself for not watching it live, because I wanted to watch NXT, and I wasn't disappointed with NXT either. Do I think AEW probably won the ratings battle? Yeah, probably. But both shows were tremendous. I mean, they were both worth watching. And they both built up for future shows. NXT built up for TakeOver, and AEW built up for their next Dynamite. And that's what you're supposed to do. It's great storytelling. It's not, you don't see a lot of that anymore. Especially in WWE. Well, you don't see it on their two main shows, being Raw and SmackDown. And, Raw, both these shows beat the hell out of Raw. And beat the hell out of Impact. And I'm going to go as far as say, the show hasn't happened, but they're going to beat SmackDown too. SmackDown is the go-home show for Fastlane. And, we'll see what happens there. But, I don't know, guys. It was a great night, and I'll say it again. I'll say it once again. I'm going to say it. It is a good time to be a wrestling fan. There is so much stuff out there. There's WWE. There's NXT. There's Raw and SmackDown. There's Impact. There's Ring of Honor. There's New Japan. There's AEW. It's just a great time to be a wrestling fan. And what it makes fun, what it really makes fun to watch these shows is when they have the storylines build up to the next shows or build up to the pay-per-views. And that's what they're doing. You know, both companies, actually all three major companies, Impact, WWE, and AEW, are doing that. It's just that AEW and NXT are doing a better job than their main shows. I mean, AEW's main show is Dynamite, I should say, but NXT is doing a better job in building feuds than their main shows. And that's all there is to that. So, but on that note, I'm going to end the show today. I appreciate you guys tuning in. You can check it out on video on demand on YouTube. Just when you go to look it up, it's the Wrestling Angle 1. That's the number 1, and it's all one word. And you'll see it. It doesn't have this logo. There's another logo that I had made, and I use that for my YouTube channel. Continue to check out my Facebook page, the Wrestling Angle 1. I'm constantly posting news on there. You can check out my Instagram and Twitter. It's ECW, the number 4 LFE. That's ECW for life. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I don't know if I'm going to have a SmackDown show. I really want to change up the look to my stream. Next week, I'm getting a stream deck. So I'm going to have some sound effects. So I want to work on that. And I want to get myself some new overlays and improve the look a little bit. Although this look goes really good with the logo, I think I can find something else and to go a little bit better. So I can't tell you when my next show would be. Keep your ear to the ground. Keep looking on my Facebook page. I'll announce that when my next show is going to be, and I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And let's have a good day. Let's have a good Thursday. And it's a little bit rainy here in Western New York, and a little bit cold. But fortunately, I'm in the house all day, because I'm waiting for a dishwasher to be delivered and installed. One of the advantages of not being employed, along with doing all the housework around the house, which I have no problem doing because I want to help my wife out. Excuse me. And but that's some of the advantages, along with spending more time with my kids. My kids are very important to me. And that's that. So everybody have a good Thursday, and I will see everybody when I see everybody. All right, have a good day, guys.